This is Science Frontiers.
TLC.
Are UFOs real? Join the search for the truth.
And this white light was coming down to me.
There are hugely advanced intelligences, life forms out there.
I think there's a cover-up.
We're not hiding anything. We don't have spacecraft and the beings stuffed in some hangar on one of our centers.
We don't know, and we want to know.
Examine the evidence and join the quest to uncover the reality behind the myth.
The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found at Roswell, New Mexico, and sent to Wright Field, Ohio, for further inspection.
The Roswell Incident, a story that is often at the heart of UFO mythology.
Army officers say the missile, found sometime last week, has been inspected at Roswell, New Mexico.
Is this strange metal from a crashed alien spacecraft? Can anyone even prove that the ship existed? Where was the metal manufactured?
Everybody who's looked at it says it's been structured by someone for some reason. We just don't know who or why.
We took some of Linda Howe's crash site metal to England for examination at the prestigious laboratories of AEA Technology at Harwell. Dr. Alison Crossley, one of AEA's leading scientists, joined forces with Dr. Keith Rogers of Cranfield University to conduct the tests.
It's predominantly magnesium, and it does have layers, which very, very thin layers, which do have bismuth in them.
It's not just a single sheet of material, it's built up from several layers, and each layer is slightly different than the previous layer, which makes it quite interesting and quite deliberate manufacturing.
We've come across magnesium in combination with the other elements that were detected, like bismuth. But in that layered form, I wouldn't know why it was made like that.
This combination of magnesium and bismuth is not commonly found in general manufacturing processes, so it's a fairly specialised application, whatever it's been used for. But to be honest, I wouldn't like to hazard a guess.
Right from the very beginning of my research as a science reporter, my expectation was that within a very short period of time I would find the person or the industry that worked with this material had made this layered material, and I would come up with some explanation, yes, this is used in to do X.
Linda Howe had already asked some of America's leading manufacturers of exotic alloys if they knew of this strange magnesium bismuth material.
Do you know what this is?
I'll tell you, I haven't the slightest idea. I frankly would see if you could get in touch with the metallurgist at Sandia National Laboratories.
Boy, that's a weird one.
Yeah. And you're asking me if I know what this is? Or what?
Yeah.
I have no idea what it, I mean, I could make some wild guesses, but I really don't know.
The world's largest producer of magnesium is Dow, D-O-W Chemical.
We don't do anything like that here within the Dow Chemical Company.
I haven't been able to find a single person anywhere who has any knowledge about working with bismuth and magnesium zinc in these micron layers, or has a clue what it's supposed to do.
But is it from an alien spacecraft?
I think it couldn't have come from outer space, because I don't think it would have survived entry into the atmosphere.
Because of its structural integrity and the form that we see it, it really wouldn't lend itself very well to a structural material, for example, because it would fall apart.
Magnesium melts at a very low temperature, so I don't think it could have, I don't think it's ever been out off the Earth.
When it comes to this question of how do you prove an extraterrestrial origin on anything, the one most common hypothesis is if you can come up with an isotopic ratio in elements that we can't find anywhere on the Earth, then you have something that is extraterrestrial.
The isotopic composition is really very similar to that you would expect from any piece of magnesium, for example, or any piece of bismuth. It is fairly unambiguously of a terrestrial origin.
Terrestrial and manufactured. But so far, no one knows by whom and for what purpose. While there are plenty of UFO reports, there's an acute shortage of tangible evidence. But listening to leading UFO proponents, you might not think so.
There are over 4,000 cases that we have in our database of these things landing and leaving some physical event or trace. Now people say, where's the hard evidence? There are metal samples that have been studied that have isotopic anomalies that would be consistent with something originating from off the planet, and they are not out of a meteorite because they are manufactured. These exist. The question is, who's looking at that data and who's reporting it? It's a little bit like
the real question is, where is this alien material, and can it be independently examined? One piece scientifically authenticated could settle the UFO debate once and for all. In Chile, a local gold miner claims to have recovered some strange metal from the site of a UFO crash high in the mountains. We located Jorge Ibarra's village and the metal that is allegedly from outer space.
Everybody asking from where it came. I told them from UFO. It is because I saw when the UFO have accident over the mountain. I heard nothing more than this. And I see the lights. Same, I don't know how you say in English, many lights. That's all.
Jorge Ibarra claims he saw a spacecraft hit the top of a mountain and that he made his way to the crash site. Once there, he says he saw pieces of metal scattered all around.
I saw many. I received 10 pieces. Okay, 10 pieces I keep into the sample bag. And I back to my home. I need to make an analysis, especially I hope from London.
Initially, Jorge Ibarra said he was willing to allow a sample of his metal to be independently tested in England. Naturally, he would have to accompany it, although he had no passport. Later, he imposed restrictions on the methods of testing and asked for sums of money that made it impossible to carry out. So metal that allegedly has come from outer space remains locked away in a china cabinet in the home of a shrewd Chilean gold miner. In Russia, there was another lead to possible hard evidence that ET is here. High in the Ural Mountains, in a remote area that few foreigners have visited, a group of government geologists apparently discovered some unusual spirals that Russian UFO believers are convinced are of extraterrestrial origin.
Well, the first findings of the spirals were done in 1991 when a state expedition was sent to Ural Mountains to find gold. They're investigating soil, they're making holes and many different things. So during this investigation, just when they washed out the soil, they noticed strange metallic spirals. Some of them were like a human hair in size with a core inside. Some of them were without core or just core. Some of them were pretty big, approximately 3 centimeters long. But they took them just as a technological pollution. The following expedition that were on 1992 and 1993, again, in a different places, different locations, they found the same type of spirals. I decided to make my own expedition there, and I did it on 1995. We came there exactly to the area where this state expedition were looking for gold, and we have visited the spots. We just took the samples of the soil, washed them out, and we found these spirals. During our investigation, we tried to have a very close look on all possible theories about it.
Spiral samples were taken back to the Institute of Geology in Moscow for detailed examination by scientists there. One of them had been on site in the Ural Mountains when the spirals were found.
There are several points which, at least for the moment, we cannot explain exactly. First, the spirals are distributed over a very wide area. We know that the Ural Mountain region is like a large rubbish dump. There's a lot of industrial pollution. When we went looking specifically for spirals, we tried to make sure our experiment was not contaminated by any other materials.
All the samples that were found in the previous years too, they were taken out from the depths between 2 and 12 meters deep, which also can give us idea about the approximate age of the spirals.
When we washed out the soil sample, it was from at least 6 meters below the surface, and we were careful. Based on this, the deposits in the quarry that the spirals came from have been dated to something in the order of 80 to 100,000 years old. We all the experts agreed that the spirals were not organic but manufactured, which begs the question, are these spirals from our civilization or some other? That remains an open question. Sometimes we lean in one direction and then we go in the other.
Valery Uvarov agreed that we could take some of the Russian spirals to Britain for an independent analysis.
The spirals looked very pretty. They were filaments round a core. The filament was tungsten metal and the core was molybdenum. They actually looked to us like light bulb filaments. They did have the same structure that a light bulb filament would have. There was a lot of metallic debris with the spirals. We found osmium and iridium, commonly found in pen nibs actually. I think they could well be scrap material that had been dumped there.
It's not impossible. The Ural Mountain region is known to be an area of top-secret industries, with factories hidden among its valleys. But Russian UFO investigators know this well. The mystery is that they still believe that the filament lookalikes found there predate our civilization. Unidentified flying objects create a compelling attraction for anyone who has experienced them, directly or indirectly. In the 1960s, Sir Peter Hawsley carried out his own private investigation.
I didn't believe or disbelieve in them. I was just inquiring into them. I was inquiring into them because there were an awful lot of reports around at the time, and because there were aircrew, I suppose, pilots and what have you.
As an RAF fighter pilot who eventually rose to the rank of Air Marshal at the Ministry of Defense, Peter Hawsley was in a unique position to know whether the UFO phenomenon has any substance to it. Early in his career, when he was a young worker at Buckingham Palace, he became interested in UFOs.
I was working in the palace at the time, and we all discussed it. Prince Philip, General Browning, we all discussed it, sometimes jokingly, sometimes quite seriously. And I think Prince Philip was very open-minded about the whole subject. And I suggested one day that I should do a little research into it. He was absolutely fine. He said, don't bring any adverse publicity on the palace, obviously. Don't become a crank about it. You know, go ahead, inquire into it. The Fighter Command rang me up and said, we have a case here with a crew of a vampire night fighter who've seen an unidentified flying object flying right over them. And I then went to Westmoreland, spoke to the station commander, and he introduced me to these two. And they said they were at 20,000 feet. they saw this object approaching. It was circular, it had bright lights around it, and it went over the top of them at a vast speed, at about 1,000 miles an hour. And when I got back, I checked up, and the radar had picked it up as well. There were many reports.
It seems that reliable eyewitnesses and pictures are the hardest evidence we may have for UFOs. The extraordinary pictures which this East Anglian photographer has recently taken have never been shown on television. If they pass professional scrutiny, they might support the argument that ET is here. Though it's exciting, visual evidence of UFOs is far from reliable. This one in Mexico City is generally considered to be a hoax. It has the characteristics of a balloon or a clever composite picture. But some UFO pictures are more credible than others. How seriously can we take images like these?
There are so many cheaters there who do it deliberately, who use this the people's wanting to believe something like that to their own purposes, mercantile, commercial type purpose, making money out of it. And you know, frauds. There are so many frauds in this particular area.
But there is a hard core of definitely not faked and hoaxed material that shows craft, big craft, three-dimensional maneuvering with incredible capabilities in our skies.
We have hundreds of photographs that are daylight, crystal clear. They've been analyzed, and they're not hoaxes. There's thousands of feet of videotape of these objects.
It's difficult to discern anything from most of these blurred images, and their ownership is often unknown. In a quiet suburb of Lowestoft, England, what could prove to be a classic UFO story is unfolding. It involves David Spohr and his wife Jean, a respected local couple. David is an accomplished landscape photographer, but he says he can't make a living from it. We paid him for exclusive television access to other video footage that he had taken.
It is, though. It does look like the ordinary cars, doesn't it?
Jean Spohr is a local counselor, and during the day, while she's at work, her husband spends many hours on the roof of their house, scanning the skies of Lowestoft. During the past 18 months, David Spohr has recorded some extraordinary pictures.
One August evening, I think it was the 19th, I was closing my garage door and just looked up and do that, being interested in photography, I'm interested in skies. I looked up and I saw this sort of strange cylindrical shaped object, cigar shaped, whatever you like to call it, coming over from the west, more or less directly over the house. I was sort of quite rooted to the spot for a few seconds because it was just unusual to see something coming without any wings, no sound, anything. I propped the camera on the fence just outside the back door, got a few frames of it before it sort of seemed to accelerate terrific speed into the east and disappeared completely. That was the first time that I'd ever seen anything, or certainly videoed anything.
A few streets away, some neighbors also saw something in the sky on that same day at the same time.
As I was walking up the pavement, I noticed a very shiny object, which was weird because there was no sound, no vapor trail, and straight as I saw it, I thought, oh, I've never seen nothing like this, before in my life. So I called my wife out.
And I came into the back garden and I picked it up further down, so it was going towards that direction. It was just a really bright, long orange cylinder shape, and to one side there was a little arm with a light sort of flashing quite slowly, like a pulsating light, and there was no sound. And so I thought, I'll go in to try and get the camera. By the time I come out again, it just disappeared. It just was then going and just went.
Anne Thacker made a drawing from memory of the object she saw that day. Two months later, David Spoor had another UFO sighting near his home.
I saw a series of flashing lights coming from the sea. I grabbed my camera, got on my bike, came down to this exact spot where we are now, and I saw this object in the sky, a very bright light appear, and it seemed to appear almost out of nothing. It was like almost a saucer shaped, very bright, and it was shimmering. But after about 3 or 4 minutes, it seemed to move slightly towards me, coming from the sea, very slowly. About that point, I was hand-holding the camera. I was getting quite tired. I thought, well, I'll have to have a bit of a break from this, and also the battery was getting very low. Put the camera down, started changing the battery, which took a couple of minutes or so. When I looked up again, the object had disappeared completely. Whether it shot off, whether it just disappeared, I don't know, but that's basically what happened.
In the following year, David Spoor saw and photographed at least 2 more UFOs, and his wife also witnessed a major sighting.
I was actually in my sun lounge reading the paper, as far as I can remember, and I had my camera with me most of the time, and looked out, and I saw this object which appeared to be hovering in the northeast. I picked my camera up and I started filming this object. At first it was stationary for a minute or so, and then it appeared to move sideways.
It was moving over the bush, coming across, going out to sea, in the direction of the sea, very, very slowly. No sound, just hovering across. But unfortunately I was going to work and it was a deadline, so I could only watch it for a certain time, and then I had to leave it with David to see where it ended.
When it went behind a tree, I know I came round to the side of the house and more towards the front to see if I could pick it up again, and I did pick it up, and it had moved the other way, and I lost it behind part of the house. And this wasn't a tremendously long sighting, but it was an interesting one because it was a daylight sighting, and the object appeared to be quite, well, I don't know if it's solid, but it certainly was a luminous object rather than just a light. And it appeared to be what might be called a sort of almost traditional saucer. That is what I can only describe as what it appeared to me.
The fact is, David Spoor is a skillful still photographer. What does he say to those who would suggest that he's faking these videos?
All I can say is just have a look at what I've taken, have a look at what the footage I've done, and especially perhaps the daylight ones, and if they can work out a way how that could be faked, they're a better man than I am, because I don't know how I could have faked any of those, and I can say categorically that I haven't faked them. They are things that have happened that I have seen, that my wife has seen. Whether people believe me, all I can say is that is the truth.
The Defence Evaluation and Research Agency is an executive branch of England's Ministry of Defence. They agreed to look at David Spoor's pictures. Dr. Richard Crowther is an expert in, among other things, identifying space debris in the skies over Britain. We asked him if he knew what the unidentified objects in David Spore's pictures were.
Potentially, it could be a tank from a launch vehicle, it could be any pressurized vessel from a satellite. Without any idea of the resolution, any idea of the distance from the observer, any reference point against which the motion can be measured, I'm not confident that it is space debris.
A few days later, Richard Crowther called to say that the image that David Spore had recorded on the 19th of August could have been a space shuttle passing over Lowestoft as it returned to Earth. It was scheduled to be over the North Sea around lunchtime that day. David Spore says his video was taken at about 7:45 in the evening. Spore's most controversial pictures came about a year later.
My wife was actually out at a council meeting with some other councillors, and I looked towards the east, and I managed to get a shot of it with the camera actually propped on the top of our car, so it's fairly steady. It kept in that position for around half a minute or so. Then it suddenly shot off quite a pretty fast speed, fast enough that I couldn't keep up with it. Once it disappeared, I stopped filming and tried to move around to the house to see if I could pick it up anywhere else, and I couldn't see it anywhere. Again, it made no sound whatsoever.
David Spore willingly agreed to bring his video to London for examination by a team of forensic specialists. Network International regularly assists Scotland Yard in criminal matters. Authenticating photographic and electronic images is Rob Butler's specialty. He examined 2 of David's videos in detail before delivering his findings.
What appears to be a triangular-shaped object may not be in reality. What appears to be an object moving to the left, in fact, could be a stationary object.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you on that. But on the other hand, what appears to be a triangular object could well be a triangular object, and it could be moving to the left as well.
And there certainly is evidence to suggest that it's actually the camera that's moving, not the object.
I don't think I was moving that much, but I mean, there's a possibility I could have wavered slightly now and again. Yeah. But I think perhaps we can agree to disagree on certain points. But what I would ask you, Rob, is would you agree that was an object in the sky of some sort?
It does appear to be.
Yeah.
It does appear to be, but I believe it's not moving, and it's a point source of light, such as a star.
I was obviously looking through the viewfinder most of the time with the right eye. My left eye is not particularly brilliant, but what I saw through the viewfinder, it did appear to be this triangular, or I thought it was saucer-shaped at the time, but it probably is more triangular. But that's all I can say as I saw it and as I filmed it. I can't prove to you other than what I've got on videotape. That's how it appeared to me.
Rob Butler found a problem with the second unknown image.
If we look closely, you can see an oval-shaped dark line. Just tells me that this was copied from the TV screen.
Right.
So it makes it difficult for me to say, yes, this is authentic, because it's been produced by a process which could allow anything to be added.
The original of this tape was produced on a DV digital tape, which was part of a tape that got chewed up very badly, and fortunately I had made a VHS copy, which I again copied onto other VHSs. There was one of the copies that I did actually shoot off a TV screen, so I could actually see into the object a bit better. To be honest, I'm not 100% certain whether this is that particular tape or not.
But if you look at it from my perspective, I've been asked, is this genuine footage of a genuine occurrence? And I can't say yes to that because it's a copy, because I believe it was copied off the TV screen. The mere fact that it's not original means that tampering could have happened in its production. So, in answer to the question, is it genuine? I can't say yes.
No. Well, I mean, I can't help you any more on that, other than to say I know at that particular time what I took and what, unfortunately, I didn't have any other witnesses to this, but so I'm the only witness to this particular object, and all I can say is it was an object that went behind the neighbour's house that I filmed.
In the end, the forensic analysis of David Spore's pictures was inconclusive.
I can't claim 100% that these things I'm photographing are extraterrestrials or what, but I do know they are what I actually photographed and what I saw with my eyes.
There are thousands of UFO sightings every year in different countries around the world. And there seems to be no common denominator of age, sex, or profession among those who are seeing them. What are the possible earthly explanations for a phenomenon that many believe must be extraterrestrial in origin? In recent years, there's been a spate of UFO sightings in Mexico. Balls of light, sometimes hovering, sometimes darting across the skies. There's no question that whatever they are, they're real objects. Too many people, on too many occasions, have independently witnessed and recorded them for it to be a nationwide hoax. The small town of Puebla has become something of a mecca for UFO researchers and buffs. Like David Spore in England, Dr. Soledad de la Peña has found an absorbing new hobby in UFO watching from the roof of her house.
I started to take a genuine interest in the objects in the Puebla skies in around 1991. From the time of the solar eclipse, many objects were seen in parts of the country, and many were seen in this area. I think this is one of the most important night videos that exist, as the object is very low in the sky. And as the shot goes on, we can see its relationship to the city and to the trees. From 1991 until today, I think I've seen around 1,000. 1,000, I'm not exaggerating. I've seen an infinite number of them. They could be spacecraft or secret craft from an advanced country. But that gets absurd because I'd want to ask, what are they looking for here in Puebla? I have discovered that there is a close relationship between the appearance of the UFOs and volcanic activity. When I see a lot of UFOs, it could mean that there's going to be problems with the volcano.
Dr. Soledad may have unwittingly made a connection that some scientists suggest is the answer to the UFOs that appear to be spheres of light.
The empirical analysis that we've completed indicate that most luminous events that people call UFO reports are coupled to earthquake activity, that they're natural phenomena, and both these balls of light, no matter how unusual they may be, and earthquakes have one thing in common: tectonic strain, not extraterrestrial forces.
One theory seems particularly relevant to Mexico. It suggests that deep within the earth, extreme pressure on rocks produces an electric charge that manifests itself above ground as balls of light. Mexico rests on a bed of seismic activity, and many, like Dr. Soledad, have seen UFOs in and around Mount Popocatépetl. Still, it seems unlikely that the tectonic strain theory can fully explain unidentified lights that have been seen in Russia, Germany, Israel, and many other locations around the world.
The whole group was hovering, not making any sudden moves. It was just hovering in a stable kind of way. Then I saw a small sphere come in from the right. It looked as if it flew right into the group and dissolved.
And what about the UFOs that appear to have a definite craft shape, disc, hub, cigar, that pilots and others have been reporting for years?
About 4 miles ago, we passed an unknown object like a cigar. Do you have anything on the scope?
The
public was seeing a lot of classified programs back in the 50s and 60s, looked like unidentified flying objects. The intelligence community knew that those were their own programs and just didn't tell anyone. I think that if you ask what are the unidentified flying objects, they are regular airplanes, that they are highly classified, unacknowledged high-performance or stealth aircraft. Some of them are Russian airplanes that we bought for evaluation. Flying saucers, I don't think so.
In reality, secret military aircraft in the skies and tectonic strain beneath the Earth may account for a large percentage of UFO sightings. And over the last 40 years, there's been another possible source: debris in space.
Endeavour, check pre-drift.
We can track with radars and the telescopes of the order of 8,000 objects. We know the positions of these on a regular basis. One of those, on average, comes back to Earth a day. When they come back to Earth, when they pass through the atmosphere, they heat up. Some are destroyed, some parts of objects survive re-entry and hit the surface of the Earth.
But there is still a percentage of sightings that remain a mystery.
There's always a small group of sightings that can't be explained, but you know, there are always a small group of murders in Los Angeles that can't be explained every year. But it would be bizarre in the extreme, you have to admit, to suggest that those particular murders weren't committed by humans, they were committed by aliens, for example. I mean, the fact that some are unexplained doesn't constitute proof or even evidence.
There is dramatic new evidence from the Hubble telescope that the chances of there being life elsewhere in the universe are far greater than was ever imagined. In October 1998, looking 12 billion years back in time, Hubble revealed an early universe with twice as many galaxies than was previously thought.
We know that life probably comes about pretty easily when the conditions are right, the temperature situation, the humidity, and so on. And we find life forms in very hostile environments on the bottom of the ocean, in hot sulfur springs and so on. I think that out there in this vast, vast universe, I'm pretty sure there must be many, many life forms. It must be teeming with life forms.
But if the universe is teeming with life forms, some of which may be more technically advanced than we are, why shouldn't they be visiting Earth?
We aren't that important with our own little planet, with our medium-class sun in a distant corner of our galaxy in one of the spiral arms. And here you got people who are saying that we are the most important folks in the universe because we are being visited again and again by superior beings.
There is no doubt that a UFO phenomenon does exist, and it's global. But so far, there's no conclusive evidence that it has any extraterrestrial connection. Whenever evidence is presented, it seems to fade away after closer examination.
I think if they were here, if there was some evidence that they were here, you'd have tens of thousands of university researchers beavering away on this problem at night. I mean, this would be the most important scientific problem they could work on. And the fact that they're not doing it speaks volumes to me.
Okay, turbo fans are up.
Rather than look for ET on Earth, scientists at NASA are firmly focused on a search elsewhere. If it works, Dr. Leek Mirabeau's experiment with pulsed laser propulsion may be the method that puts spacecraft of the future far beyond the pull of Earth's gravity. It's part of an adventurous NASA program that's pushing hard at the boundaries of science.
We're supposed to be looking to the far edge, to the cutting edge of advanced technologies and pressing the frontiers of science. So we are going to look for new ways to do things. We have a center, the Marshall Space Flight Center, whose job is to be the center of excellence for propulsion. That means they ought to be looking at new stuff, and if they're not doing their job. If you've got your foot on the pedal and you can still steer the car, you're not going fast enough, and that's what we believe around here.
The breakthrough propulsion program that we're investigating started with our interest in trying to understand a lot of the phenomena that are being discovered from Hubble and from other astronomy activities, from particle physics and studies into relativity that are uncovering a number of peculiar phenomena that might have propulsion benefits if they are pursued to some reality. So we're interested in pursuing some of these to see if in fact we could potentially approach the speed of light with travel, or possibly exceed that. There's a lot of controversy in whether that's possible or not.
NASA's not shy of controversy. In a program of cutting-edge research, Dr. David Neuber is using superconductors in powerful magnetic fields to test the claims of a Russian scientist who says he's managed to modify the immutable law of gravity. If it's possible, it could have a greater impact than the invention of the wheel.
When I was a little kid this size, if I were to have gone outside the county, it would have been a steam locomotive. Now I'm in a spaceship. Take that acceleration of science and technology and do it for several million years, or a billion years. You know, interstellar travel is probably a possibility when you get, you know, if you accelerate that amount of technology. So yeah, it's going on out there.
We have an Origins program that is looking for signs of life elsewhere beyond Earth. And by life, I don't necessarily mean multi-cell life. Right now, we'd settle for single-cell life somewhere.
A meteorite that was found in the Antarctic in 1996 appears to show microscopic signs of life, and it's believed to have come to Earth from Mars some 13,000 years ago. The possibility of life on Mars, however simple, has helped galvanize NASA into an ambitious new series of missions into space.
If you really want to get inspired and look to the future, look at science fiction books or magazine articles about the future. Look at the predictions that science fictions are writing, and then go, you know, way beyond that. And that's probably where we're headed.
We have ignition and we have liftoff of NASA's Mars Climate Orbiter as we continue to explore the mysteries of the red planet.
On December the 11th, 1998, the Mars Climate Orbiter mission left Earth. On that day, the search for ET began in earnest.
There'll be a mission every 2 years for the next 10 years, culminating with a Mars sample return in around 2003, 2004, bringing it back around 2006 with the first samples back. So that's going to be a step towards learning, is there life elsewhere beyond Earth? We've got the Galileo probe going through the system of Jupiter, and they've discovered a layer of ice around Europa, one of the moons of Jupiter. Well, we think under that layer of ice there might be an ocean 60 miles deep. Two things you need for life are a source of water and a source of energy. If Europa has that, it could lead to very exciting breakthroughs. And then, through things like the Hubble Space Telescope and the next generation telescope that'll come after the turn of the century, we're going to focus our instruments on planets in other solar systems. And then try to find out, might there be life there? In a universe of points of light, you know, trillions of points of light out there, the notion that we are unique, that we are somehow the only place in the celestial neighborhood where there's life is inconceivable to me. Now the matter is, can we find that life? Will we recognize it when we see it? And does it look anything like what we expect here?
The search for ET continues. Ever since an alleged incident in Roswell, New Mexico in 1947, people from all over the world have reported seeing strange objects in the skies. Scientists and laymen alike hunt down the answers to the ultimate and most perplexing question. Has Earth been visited by beings from other worlds? Or is it a different kind of phenomenon?
Just leave you hooked up to the arm, or you want to come out there?
Astronaut Story Musgrave is in a unique position to judge the question. He has spent 30 years with NASA and flown on 6 missions. On his journeys into space, has he seen anything that might be evidence of extraterrestrial life?
And the reaction wheel, which is inside.
Nothing that I have seen personally has the signature, has those characteristics which you would attribute to other forms of intelligence or other kinds of craft. Twice I saw what I call my eel, which I don't know the size of it because I don't know how far away it was, but it was like a rubber piece of hose which had internal motions in it. Maybe it's 8 feet, maybe it's 10, I'm not sure. When you can't tell how far away, you can't get the size, so I'm missing both of those things, size and how far away. But there's no question it had internal motion.
Although Musgrave is open to the idea of alien civilizations, he is adamant that he has never found proof of any on his shuttle missions. The new frontiers of space are providing pictures that, to some, fuel the UFO controversy. In this footage, taken from shuttle mission STS-80, the camera is pointing back at Earth. There are many features that are known here. Flashes of lightning from tropical thunderstorms, the city lights of Denver, Colorado, meteors, satellites, and some 8,000 pieces of space debris. But there are some objects that still remain a mystery. Like this strange shape that appears unexpectedly from the Earth's atmosphere. Is it a UFO? What do the experts make of it?
I don't know what it is. Whether it's a washer, debris, ice particle, I don't know. But it's characteristic of the thousands of things which I've seen. What is not quite so characteristic, it appears to come from nowhere. You would think that even if it's facing the dark side or facing a side toward you which does not reflect the sun, you think you would see something there. That one is really impressive.
My first understanding that what you see was a reflection of a rising moon in the window through which the camera is looking. This was my first impression. But on the second thought, I thought that would be wrong. You know, usually in life there are some possibilities which you don't think of. I don't know.
My best guess from my scientific point of view is that we really are being visited by extraterrestrials. Probably have been for some time, and I believe that at least some of these UFO reports are genuine. And by UFO, I really don't mean unidentified flying object, I mean extraterrestrial spacecraft. I think the word has evolved into meaning that, and I think there are enough examples from enough reliable witnesses to suggest that this cries out for investigation.
Dr. Kasher and other UFO believers think they have proof that NASA is keeping something secret.
Let them put their analysis in some peer-reviewed journals or professional journals or a general interest publication, but I haven't seen any of it. We're not hiding anything. We don't have the UFOs, spacecraft, and the beings stuffed in some hangar on one of our centers. There would be no reason for us to do that. One of our goals is to find the origins and the search for life. If we find life, if we think we've been visited by life, we are going to trumpet it loudly. Our budget's been going down for the last 5 years. If there's one thing that could turn it around, it's some clear indication that life has either come here or we have found it somewhere else. We're not about to cover that up.
In 1947, some believed that an alien spacecraft crashed in the desert near the town of Roswell, New Mexico. Although they later retracted the statement, the U.S. military initially seemed to confirm the fact. 2 weeks earlier, Kenneth Arnold, a private pilot, had reported seeing disc-shaped craft in the skies ahead of him near Mount Rainier, Washington. These two incidents triggered a phenomenon that, over the last 50 years, has attracted followers from all walks of life. Dr. Stephen Greer, a qualified medical doctor, is certain that UFOs are both real and extraterrestrial. He believes that he has the evidence to justify a congressional hearing on the subject.
There's more evidence for this subject than there is for black holes. We have over 3,500 pilot reports from a member of my team who's collected them from civilian and military people. We have 4,000 landing trace events. We have hundreds of photographs that are daylight, crystal clear. They've been analyzed, and they're not hoaxes.
So far, Greer's efforts to persuade Congress have been unsuccessful, but his organization continues to groom its followers for contact with extraterrestrials.
There's been a combination of tremendous security put around the subject, which we're familiar with, and public disinformation and ridicule, which makes the subject the laughingstock of the scientific community and others. And so I may go and meet with the deputy director of NASA, and they're extremely interested, and they know the subject is real, but they would never go and be in front of a camera talking about it because it'd be the end of their careers professionally.
There's no doubt that the UFO phenomenon attracts more than its share of ridicule. But are photographs, however doubtful, and individual eyewitness accounts too readily dismissed by skeptics?
We, healthy, normal human beings, we are able to describe something we have seen accurately, and we are not the victims of delusions all the times. We can be, but we are not always. Denying the reality of UFOs means denying the value of the human testimony itself.
The local UFO clubs that Michael Hessman addresses are part of a growing international circuit. The majority here are convinced that UFOs are real and extraterrestrial in origin. Is it such an impossible idea?
It is not impossible at all for people to believe that we could be visited by other civilizations, because we ourselves send UFOs to other planetary bodies. So if there was life on some other planet, they may have also done the same thing by sending things to other planetary bodies.
That there is intelligent life elsewhere in the universe is not doubted by many of today's scientists and astronauts, like Ulrich Walter.
I'm convinced that in our universe there are other intelligence. However, I don't think that's true within our galaxy, in our Milky Way.
Astronaut Story Musgrave is even more convinced.
Statistically, it's a certainty. There are hugely advanced civilizations, intelligences, life forms out there. I believe they're so advanced that they're even doing interstellar travel. I believe it's possible they came here.
The ultimate question is someone else out there? And if they're out there, how many of them are there, and are they visiting us? We don't know, and we want to know.
What is it about the UFO phenomenon that makes it so difficult to pin down, despite reports of sightings from all over the world? Primarily, it's the nature of the evidence. Extraordinary claims require extraordinary proof. High in the mountains of Chile, Jorge Ibarra, a gold miner, says he had a close encounter with the UFO.
I saw one light, the big light. It stopped over my head, about 300 meters high. It has a blue light, completely blue light down. In this moment, the UFO cut the blue light and give us three types of light, yellow, green, and red. They came in direct for me. Said I received one special energy force on my body. But something curious, the UFO have no noise of the motor, only as a wind. Same when you have a stick, big stick, and make this way, and the UFO moving again.
Like so many UFO accounts, Jorge Ibarra's story rests solely on the reliability of one individual's testimony, without tangible evidence. In Belgium, in 1989 and 90, it was a very different story. There, a UFO phenomenon gained the attention of the whole country. Hundreds of separate sightings of a strange triangle of lights that moved slowly across the countryside were reported to the authorities. And this time, the unidentified flying object was investigated by a number of experts.
At first sight, it is very strange. Because, for example, the technical characteristics of such flying objects are very different from what we know.
Professor Leon Brainig teaches at the Free University of Brussels and was one of those who looked closely at the phenomenon.
I saw a lot of first-hand witnesses, had direct access to at least 800 investigations which were carefully made. All these investigations indicate that there is really a phenomenon which is unusual. The flying characteristics are highly strange. We have a lot of observations of such triangular platform which was hovering silently without any apparent action on the air above a farm during 20 minutes. Why above a farm? What does it mean?
One of the many witnesses at the time was Colonel André Armand, a civil engineering officer in the Belgian army. In December 1989, he was driving along this road at night when he saw 3 triangular panels of light moving slowly across the sky.
I saw the yellow panels beyond the trees there, flying till the trees there, and the yellow panels change into a white light, and this white light was coming down to me. At this moment, my wife told to me, André, come, we must go now. Because when you see such big light coming to you, that's very strange to see that. And my wife said to me, André, we are going away now. This light disappears, and I saw only 3 yellow, white, smaller lights, triangular. The center, the red light, pulsing, always pulsing. And this object was flying away very, very fast in this direction.
In the following months, there were similar sightings of a strange triangle of lights, not just in the countryside, but also hovering over the rooftops in the center of Brussels. Marcel Alfarano, a shopkeeper, managed to capture it on his camcorder.
It happened at about 2:20 in the morning on the night of the 31st of March. I took my camera and I went upstairs. It was at that moment that I saw in the distance 2 lights. They were bigger than car headlights, and they were slowly coming towards me. They were moving very slowly, high above the rooftops there. And as they got closer, I could see there was a 3rd light behind the other 2. They stopped over there. I realized it was not a plane. It was something bizarre, something unrecognizable. Later, some people from the government phoned me and they say I should not get too carried away. They said I should say it was a plane I had filmed.
Belgian Air Force decided that whatever the UFO was, it could not be ignored.
In 89, 90, we had a lot of observation from the ground, a lot of people seeing strange things in the air, and the Belgian Air Force already scrambled 2 times F-16 to observe what the people saw from the ground.
Wilfried de Brouwer, a colonel at the time, was officer in charge of operations.
Some people saw very strange objects in the air with a very peculiar behavior. They called the police. The police confirmed the observation. They called the radar station of Glon, and Glon confirmed that they saw a blip in the area. And that was also confirmed by another radar station, which is about 100 miles away. Based on that, they asked to send these 2 aircraft in the air.
That night we had a scramble with 2 F-16. I was one of the 2 pilots, so I was leading the pair for that mission. We had a lot of information coming from the ground, and those people could basically inform us about the exact position of the, I would say, the UFO.
Ground radar observed a blip which was moving very fast from an area south of Brussels towards the east. The aircraft were in the near vicinity and, of course, tried to detect that particular object. And the 2 aircraft confirmed that they had a lock-on which showed the speed of 700 knots, around 700 knots.
The F-16s locked onto the UFO repeatedly, but as they closed in, it changed direction and speed with extraordinary maneuverability. The pilots had no doubt that the target was real.
We had a different radar contact on the target, so it happens at least 3-4 times, where we could acquire a radar lock-on with the F-16, and we knew that at least 1 or 2 times we had exactly the same contact as the one which was on the screen on the ground. It was accelerating very fast, so it was going from 50 knots to more than 1,000 knots. It was really climbing and descending very fast, and it was changing, heading abruptly. And most of the time it was even flying supersonic.
The Air Force never did make direct visual contact with the UFO. Exactly what the target was remained a mystery.
I don't think it could have been experimental aircraft. First of all, we always look to the United States. They could have been doing experiments here. I don't see why they should be doing it in Belgium in the first place. Secondly, they confirmed officially that it was not them. We had an official declaration of the ambassador here. And thirdly, the performance of this system was such that it could not be related even to an experimental technology.
It was not a prototype, and I don't really believe it was a meteorological phenomena at that moment.
There's not much left, and one could refer to an extraterrestrial observation or vehicle, if you want. And I think that's an option which, or an assumption which should not be excluded. I'm not saying that it was an extraterrestrial, but it is an assumption that should not be excluded.
The radar tape from one of the F-16s was sent for examination by experts at the Center for the Study of Electronic Warfare. The radar specialist who advised the investigating team there was Professor Emil Schweitzer, a distinguished physicist who teaches at the country's elite military academy. What did he make of the strange, unidentified craft that the Belgian Air Force tried to intercept?
that UFO could make right turns, which is impossible by our laws of mechanics, and that UFO could also change, which is also impossible, but because it would give an infinite acceleration.
Is it possible that the Air Force's unseen UFO was nothing more than a technical aberration in the radar equipment?
I don't think that you can explain it by saying that all radars made the same mistake. That's highly unlikely. There are different types of radar, there are different types of antennas, and also the orientation of the target was different for the 4 radars. I'm going to be fired by my colleagues, but I think that extraterrestrial intelligence is very highly likely.
A photograph of the Belgian Triangle of Lights was later computer enhanced. The image that was revealed appears to show a dark, delta-shaped craft behind the lights. As more people worldwide search the skies, more UFO sightings are reported, and increasingly, these sightings are interpreted as extraterrestrial evidence, perhaps by popular imagination. Mass communications have spread details of alleged sightings around the globe, revealing, among other things, that there are recurring similarities between some UFOs of today and those of the past. This footage was taken near a military base in Montana in 1957.
I saw 2 silvery objects moving swiftly out of the northwest. They appeared to be of a bright, shiny metal, like polished silver. Both were the same size and were traveling at the same rate of speed, which was much slower than the jets which shot by shortly after I filmed the discs.
In Germany, more than 30 years later, strange balls of light were again seen in the sky, but this time they were stationary and were witnessed and photographed by hundreds of people. It happened at Greifswald on the Baltic Sea. Larry Vinogradov was one of those who had his video camera in hand. He recorded what he saw that night.
I heard noises, so I went into the kitchen. I looked out of the window. I could hear excited voices in the street, and everyone was pointing towards the sky. And then I saw these glowing balls hanging in a sort of formation in the sky. It was in this direction, over Greifswald nuclear power station, towards the town of Lubin. Within the formation, the spheres all seemed to be rotating, but it was as if they were acting together in a formation, and the whole group was hovering, not making any sudden moves. It was just hovering in a stable kind of way. Then I saw a small sphere coming from the right. It looked as if it flew right into the group and dissolved. I think it's proof that, whatever they were not flares.
So far, pictures on their own have done little to solve the mystery of what UFOs are. While it's true that still photographs, moving film, and more recently home videos have produced an intriguing record of sightings over the past 50 years, imagery alone has failed to reveal much about the true nature of the objects we're seeing. The inevitable, distant, handheld, out-of-focus pictures say little or nothing of the UFO's internal mechanism, if indeed they have one, or for that matter, whether they're really from other worlds after all.
If we say, how would an alien phenomena look, then we don't have a clue. It might look like a UFO. It might look like an ordinary airplane because they're disguised. It might be totally invisible. We could look out there, and there could be an alien spacecraft hanging over the city of Houston. It's possible, but we're looking for evidence to prove it's so.
It seems there is no stereotype for UFOs. cigar-shaped, bowl-shaped, and saucer-shaped craft are the most common manifestations of the phenomenon. Whatever they are, UFOs, by definition, display characteristics that are clearly different from any known conventional craft. And that is about as much as can be deduced from visual images. On the odd occasion when UFOs are sharply photographed and the image is clearly discernible, it raises other problems. In 1971, on vacation on the borders of Austria and Germany, a musician and his wife were enjoying the landscape when they witnessed something very unusual. Rudy Nagora recalls what happened.
I heard a whistling tone that was coming from somewhere nearby. I thought somebody was playing with the radio in their car, but it wasn't the case. Then I could hear that the sound was coming from above. I looked up, and in the sky I suddenly saw a round moving object. It certainly didn't move like an aeroplane. A plane might do loops, but it doesn't suddenly stop and stand still. A helicopter could suddenly stop, but you would be able to see the movement of the rotor blades, and there were none. It stood still in the air and made a humming noise. It wasn't in one spot all the time. It would suddenly be behind me. So I had to keep turning around. But in the end I managed to take 12 pictures. Of course, they were ridiculed a lot, doubted. People said I had seen a hubcap and such like, until they were analyzed.
Rudy Nagora's pictures were independently examined in Germany and America, and no evidence of trick photography was discovered. But are they evidence of an extraterrestrial craft? A close encounter through a camera lens is not proof enough. In Mexico, there have been more UFO sightings in the past few years than anywhere else in the world. In 1994, the hills of Guadalajara were the setting for an alleged close encounter of the second kind. A UFO was not only seen at close hand, but there was some interaction between it and the man who photographed it. Raul Dominguez is a landowner and a businessman. He recalls the extraordinary craft he saw that day.
It was a machine that I believe was about 25 meters in diameter. The lower half revolved. I didn't notice any noise until it was very close to me. I heard it when it was 10 or 12 meters above my head, and I heard a sound like bees buzzing. I felt my hair bristling, and my clothes moved as well as my hair. Immediately afterwards, these marks appeared on my face and hands. I was ill with stomach pains and bad indigestion for a long time. The whole thing affected me very much, both physically and psychologically. It has changed me. I'm certain now that UFOs exist.
Photos of what may be spacecraft from another world are only as real as the integrity of the witnesses who take them. Believing that the subjects are extraterrestrials assumes the possibility that we could be visited by aliens in the first place, that they would somehow be able to traverse the vast distances through space. Arecibo, Puerto Rico, is the nerve center for those scientists who believe that far out in the cosmos is the only place we'll find extraterrestrial life. The largest radio telescope in the world is at the disposal of SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence.
I really do think that the aliens are out there. I don't think they're here. The reason for that is simply the lack of credible evidence, in my opinion. I mean, it's very hard to travel from one star to the next, despite what you see in the movies and on television. It's not just a matter of calling up the engine room and telling Scotty to put the pedal to the metal.
SETI was originally funded by NASA, and has searched for signs of extraterrestrial intelligence for more than 20 years. The space agency no longer invests in their experiment, and there are those who argue it's because NASA already knows that ET is here.
Observing 4067?
No, 4061.
4061. It did choose out.
It's a view that SETI's astronomers reject out of hand. They're convinced that the first contact with ET will be a radio signal that shows up on this screen.
Yeah, people often ask, have you had any close calls? Are you close to success? Well, that isn't the way this works. It's kind of what you might call a one-bit experiment. In other words, it's either yes or no. And so far, the answer is no. It's sort of like Chris Columbus, you know, until he sights land, all he's seen is water, and that's our situation.
ET's in there.
So far, all signals received have turned out to be false alarms. So is it worth continuing the search?
The question of whether anybody else is out there is the oldest unanswered question that our species has ever asked. And personally, I wouldn't work on a project that I didn't think had a chance of success.
Well, I certainly believe that the aliens are out there. I mean, I have personally no doubt about that. Obviously, there's no proof. In my opinion, there's no proof of that yet. But the reason that I think that it's got to be true is primarily just the vastness of the cosmos. I mean, there are 500 billion stars in our galaxy. There are 50 billion other galaxies, each with a 500 billion stars. That's a lot of real estate. And it would be bizarre in the extreme to think that this is the only bit of real estate where anything interesting is happening.
The founding father of SETI, Professor Frank Drake, devised an equation that estimates the universe to be teeming with intelligent life. So if ET is out there and could have reached us, then it's those who deal with space travel who are most likely to have seen some signs. Dr. Farouk Al-Baz, a geologist, now works at Boston University. For 6 years, he was a senior member of NASA's legendary Apollo program. He was head of astronaut training and responsible for intricate experiments that were scheduled for testing on the moon's surface. During his time in mission control, he experienced firsthand some unusual happenings involving astronaut Ken Mattingly in the lunar orbiter.
The one most peculiar sighting of something that we never found out what it was, and we thought it should be easy to, was the sighting of flashes on the surface of the moon by Ken Mattingly during the Apollo 16 mission. One of the objectives of that Apollo 16 mission was to see how much can we see and photograph in the part of the moon that is not lit by the sun, but by Earth shine. The first time Ken Mattingly began to do this, he said something like, "I'll be damned, I just saw a flash." And we said, "What flash?" So he said, "I just saw a light flash on the surface of the moon, something on the moon, flashed." As he came around the next time and we said, "Now be careful with this thing and look again and mark your time when you see it so we know exactly when it happens, because we want to tie this to whatever is happening in the landing site."
One of NASA's experiments on the moon involved highly sensitive seismometers that, among other things, could detect the impact of incoming meteors. If Mattingly's flashes appeared again, the instruments should record the impact of a meteor, the most likely explanation for his sighting. And so, on the next lunar orbit, Ken Mattingly was briefed to look out for flashes and report what he saw.
I said, "Okay," and he did that, and he saw 2 flashes this time, and that one orbit, not one. So we picked up the exact times, and we took these to our colleagues, the ones that had the seismometers. But at that time there was absolutely no evidence of anything hitting the moon at these hours, because it would have been picked up. For it, there is absolutely no explanation. And that remained a complete mystery.
At this time, the Russians had an unmanned presence on the moon, and that could have been the cause. But there are still some unexplained pictures. This one shows a shadow racing across the moon's surface. And here, a flash appears from a crater as an unidentified object passes overhead.
There's a funny object right there. And the astronaut's going to pan around here. Notice the moon never goes out of sight. There it is again, and the object, it's changed.
Dr. Jack Kasher has studied this film and is convinced that it shows a UFO on the moon. Head of physics at Nebraska University, Dr. Kasher's academic background is impressive.
I studied the physics of the effects of nuclear weapons, among other things. I specialized in electromagnetic theory, electromagnetic pulses, did some work on the Star Wars program out there. In 1991, I started doing research with NASA. My clearance was up to the secret restricted data. In fact, one paper that I wrote was so classified that I couldn't read it myself, but I had to get special permission to read it.
Dr. Kasher has closely studied another film taken in space during shuttle mission STS-48. He's certain that here there is irrefutable proof that there are UFOs in space, and NASA must know it. After a flash, an object seems to move rapidly away from an approaching missile. NASA sees it differently.
4 NASA scientists looked at these objects, and there will be another one right here, and decided that they were probably ice particles close to the shuttle that were being blown by the attitude adjuster rockets that go off to adjust the shuttle's orientation.
It's a fact that the shuttle's jets do blow ice particles around in space, as Story Musgrave knows well.
If you just shut the engines down, there's thousands of particles which come forward for some reason. So you see this marvelous debris come across the front windows.
My analysis leads me otherwise. I have concluded that these are probably spacecraft out in space away from the shuttle. We'll see the main object appear here soon. There it is. It's going to go up here, and there will be a double flash down here. Apparently in response to that, it'll cut back very sharply in that direction, and then you'll see a streak go through where the object had been. Watch for the double flash. There's the flash. There it goes, and there goes the streak right through where it had been. I think they're spacecraft because they change direction, apparently in response to the flashes. And so they're maneuvering, they're accelerating, changing directions out in space, and that's my definition of spacecraft.
I'm convinced that this is snowflakes, small snowflakes illuminated by the sun. There was one snowflake doing a 90 degrees turn. I don't understand why this snowflake makes such a kind of turn. It could be that it collides with something else, so it makes a different direction.
These two objects reacted.
I've seen the report by Dr. Kasher. I've heard his presentations. He has the timing of the flashes wrong. He has the position of the jets and the pulses wrong. The timing of the flashes occurred at a certain time. I tried to tell him several years ago about the fact that the visible flash on the television does not fully coincide with the actual rocket pulse. And I have a letter I sent him. He disregarded that.
I think that NASA would tend to be quiet about anything that would tend to have an extraterrestrial interpretation. I think it's like the rest of the branches of the government. I think there's a cover-up, and they are keeping things concerning UFOs from us.
3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Columbia on a life sciences mission for Earth and space.
The fact is, there are unidentified flying objects in space, and even on the way there. This one appeared in the middle of a shuttle launch.
Base of Huntsville, we have switched to TVC-2.
On another occasion, on mission STS-73, astronaut Katie Coleman is heard to announce loud and clear that she's just seen a UFO.
We have an unidentified flying object.
Is there something going on in space that we're not being told? One of the most puzzling incidents in space happened on mission STS-82 to service the Hubble telescope. Astronauts Steve Smith and Mark Lee reveal that they're seeing some strange flashes as they re-enter the airlock of the shuttle.
Okay, all right, that's good. Let's
my imagination. Yeah, I saw it too, so it's not. There's two of them. There's another one. What are they? There's sort of lights flickering in here. They're taking pictures.
Steve Smith explains what that conversation was all about.
Well, Mark and I are in the airlock at this point, and you can see from and hear that all of a sudden we saw a couple of lights flashing in the airlock. And when we were first asked about this conversation months later, we had forgotten about this. But anyway, I said, "Is that a light flashing to him?" And Mark says, "What are they?" Asking, is it a light coming from either the airlock? And then Mark asks, "Are they taking pictures of us through the airlock window?" And again, they would have a flash. We take about 10,000 pictures on each flight. So all I can think of is that it's pretty hard to turn in this thing because you're like in a closet. And we couldn't tell what light it was, so I think Mark probably had turned to a certain point, and then he said, "Oh, there's the one in front of me," or something.
I was guessing that one for a second, but I had that one the whole time. Yeah, I was looking at that one.
And I don't know what that is. I've never heard the word valence or surveillance used.
After I get there, 941-63-767, that users are looking to.
Whatever the lights were that the astronauts had seen, the transmission of their conversation appeared to be interrupted at this point.
Everything we say is basically broadcast to anybody who's listening. We have no button on our spacesuit, for example, when we're out there, that we can push just to talk to your crewmate that's spacewalking with you, or just to the people in the cockpit. We have no such button. So when we talk, it's automatically broadcast on an antenna off of our backpack out to the shuttle and then down to Earth.
Americans are not the only ones in space. The Mir space station has allowed Russian cosmonauts to break the records for the length of time spent in space. During a docking with Mir, cosmonaut Musa Manarov filmed an unidentified object that passed by.
At some point in the filming, I caught sight of something that seemed to have separated from the ship. Moreover, it was rotating as it moved away and changing its brightness. I can't say exactly how far away it was. I can only say it was not very close, because the camera was focused on infinity. At first it seemed to me that something has separated from the ship. But then, when I examined the ship, I realized that there was nothing that could have broken away. What's more, there were no alarms going off. Everything was calm. Later, there were lengthy arguments as to what it could possibly have been.
On another mission, Russian cosmonaut Gennady Strikalov is certain he saw an unusual, unidentified flying object in space.
It was a huge sphere. I think it appeared when we were over Newfoundland. The sea was in the background. It was shining, sparkling, of absolutely even shape. It shone like the balls that hang on trees at Christmas, greenish in color and all shimmering. It was impossible to take your eyes off it. I watched it for maybe 5 or 7 seconds, but I didn't have a camera, and if I'd gone to get one, I would have lost it. For just as suddenly as it appeared, so it just disappeared.
It's not difficult to misinterpret objects in space. This mysteriously floating sphere is actually a recently developed remote camera called an air cam. A distinguished astronaut who agrees with Jack Casher's belief in the reality of UFOs is Gordon Cooper. Now in his 80s, Cooper had a sighting while serving as a fighter pilot in Germany in 1951.
Well, the weatherman had reported seeing these objects in the sky, and various other people got binoculars and looked for them and saw them also, and they were flying formations similar to our fighter formations, and we proceeded to launch some airplanes to see if we could get up to where they were, and we could not, and gave up on it. They were higher and faster than we could go.
Gordon Cooper was so convinced that there was evidence of UFOs here on Earth that in 1978 he went to the United Nations and presented them with a letter describing his experience. If it's just an illusion that extraterrestrials have visited Earth, why does the UFO phenomenon continue to grow? Why do people continue to take pictures of unexplainable images? It is the mission of science to prove or disprove the unexplained.